Nothing is more contentious in the world of Jane Austen fandom than comparing the movie and television renditions of Pride and Prejudice. Since its publication, readers have never tired of the story, and so it stands to reason that their feelings on the matter might be opinionated. My screen name is Allison Jennings, and today we're going to examine the main three versions that everyone's probably seen, and it might affect you to know that yet another version may well be on the way. And if you'd like to know how many adaptations are out there, you can always search Pride and Prejudice renditions for a complete list. Starting with the version from 1940, the thing that stood out to me most were the hats. I love the hats. While the hats in the other versions are serviceable, with notice to the fact that Keira Knightley never seems to wear one, the hats in this version are quite impressive. I love the stripes that go through Mary's hat, and Lady Catherine's is thoroughly intimidating. At this point, it should be known that the first time I ever watched this version was just the other day. I thought the credit sequence at the beginning was nice, with particular notice to the sequence itself. In most movies, once the director's name has appeared, the movie is free to be revealed. In this case, however, immediately following the director's name, we get the cast of characters appearing alongside the actors and actresses portraying them. It's interesting to see how many characters were included, and yet Mrs. Louisa Hurst was not, which is something to note for whenever the text refers to the Bingley sisters. It isn't long before we are treated to the sights of someone putting on a puppet show, which was unexpected. I don't think I've ever been to a puppet show. Miss Bingley's entry into the Meryton Assembly is one for the ages. Later on, it was noticeable that the Netherfield Ball occurs in conjunction with a country fair, referred to here as a garden party. While this doesn't happen in the book, it was curious to note that during my research, many Regency-era dances were actually held following these country fairs. But of course we know that it's Mary who steals the show when it comes to the Netherfield Ball. I mean, why should we be interested in a bunch of lonely singles looking to dance, when we've got the lovely Mary performing for us, bless her heart? And how could anyone forget the spectacle that is the horse and carriage race? This scene is not only a shock to the eyes, but it looks as though someone could have seriously died. After learning so much about the pertness of the women in Pride and Prejudice, it was striking to see this moment unfold on the screen, those crazy, insane filmmakers. With regard to Elizabeth Bennet, it's hard not to notice the resemblance to Scarlett O'Hara. Well, the film was released 1 year after Gone with the Wind, so maybe there's a connection. Pride and Prejudice has many costume styles that coincide with this film, and it was here that I suddenly felt that I wished I had seen a colorized version. I mean, look at these hats. Greer Garson's portrayal of Elizabeth Bennet was excellent, and while I felt that she looked a touch older than the novel version, I could feel the emotion she conveyed quite well. Though I never got the impression that anyone would have ever called her Lizzie, nothing was overacted or underacted, and her reactions toward the Lady Catherine was something to treasure. Laurence Olivier as Mr. Darcy was fitting, though there was the natural tendency for most of the men and women in this movie to look nearly alike. Mr. Lawrence amply conveys confusion over Elizabeth's rejection, and we get the real sense that he's got a problem to deal with. But who can forget the way Lady Catherine towers in his presence? Lady Catherine de Bourgh is properly conceited and is played well by Edna May Oliver, and it was great to see her being bandied about while having her pillow adjusted. For a 2-hour movie, the time passes by with great freshness and verve, testament to a well-written script, considering the liberties it took with the material. But it must remain that Marcia Hunt's portrayal of Mary Bennet is the absolute best. She really steals the scene every time she appears. The 1995 edition produced by the BBC will forever be hailed as the definitive, the official, the beloved televised version that most Austen readers will defend to the death. And so I tread lightly when I say that for me, it will always be known as the bun hair version. In 1894, a Peacock edition of Austen's novel was published with illustrations by Hugh Thompson, who made skillful use of the bun hair technique. It seems that the BBC felt this to be the way to go on the hairstyle design, and we find that a little research reveals there were plenty of variations to choose from. And if you're looking for authenticity, this version is quite the Pride and Prejudice extravaganza. My opinion is that where the cinematography falls short of the mark, the performances make up for it in spades. Spanning 6 episodes, the writers take care to flesh out the story with great accuracy. And I found that as I read and reread the novel, I envision that it is this set of characters who fulfill the dialogue. While watching, I noticed that both of the Bingley sisters were present, which really gave credence to the notion that fundamentally, Pride and Prejudice is a Cinderella story in which a poor girl marries a prince, or in this case, a billionaire. It was also hard not to notice the likeness between Miss Bingley and Cersei Lannister. In this version, we get odd scenes like Mr. Darcy in a bathtub, while Lizzie goes about playing with a Great Dane. Mr. Hurst is seen unforgettably on the couch, drunken men are seen carousing about the street, and Darcy is sporting a scholar's cap when he catches Wickham in the act of being unprincipled. One thing that really livens the atmosphere, in light of the bland filming technique, is the presence of children. We see them more than once, and it's a nice touch that we don't get in the other versions. Going almost a little too far to replicate the book, we even see Elizabeth and Maria Lucas stopping on their way home from Hunsford to eat cold cuts with Kitty and Lydia. And where we see cute birds kept as pets in the other versions, here we see people shooting birds instead. Mr. Bennet is portrayed as perfectly diligent in the care of his daughters, just as he is in the care of himself, and it does seem as though his marriage lacks an element of genuine joy. Mary is portrayed as a terrible singer, but instead of appearing admirable nonetheless, she comes off as a little pathetic and unsightly, which was a shame since I've come to think of her as one of my favorites. Jane has a very mature air about her, and it was always nice to see her and her sister confiding in each other, helping each other along as the difficulties unfold. Lady Catherine de Bourgh is positively startling, striking terror to the bone when she confronts Elizabeth, and Mr. Collins is as goofy as ever, especially when the time comes for dancing. But what about the 2 central characters, you might ask? Well, at first I felt that Darcy looked a little more perturbed than he did miserable and prideful. While his portrayal is sufficient with regard to the text, I kept hoping he might lighten up, because he looked to be a bit tense most of the time. The infamous dive into the pond is troubling, and it seems odd that he was presented to Lizzie as a wet man. Mr. Darcy has a way about him that appears demanding, but in the end it tends to make sense in light of his position in society. By contrast, Elizabeth Bennet is so charming it makes me want to cry. She has a way of captivating attention that renders all the shabby lighting and drab set design of little importance. When she turned Darcy away, and when she faced Lady Catherine, I was incredibly tense. And when she learned about Lydia's elopement, with all the problems that it was certain to cause, I had to reach for a box of tissue to dry my eyes. That's right, I'm a little gullible like that. But what can I say? We Americans love our Pride and Prejudice as much as anyone, I suppose. It's easy to see why the 1995 version is so beloved and engenders such loyalty, which makes a survey of the 2005 version all the more difficult to perform. The 2005 film adaptation of Pride and Prejudice is the version I grew up with. I saw the movie before I read the book, and though it leaves out many of the characters and plot points, the cinematography is one of the main reasons why I've always enjoyed this version. The candlelit scenes are enticing and the landscapes are lush, especially when we get to that scene of Pemberley. Heaven have mercy. While it does suffer from the sin of having a pig venture through Longbourn House, I suppose it can't be any worse than watching Colin Firth dive into a pool of pond scum. Darcy is miserable in this version, and it's nice to see Lizzie poke fun at him for it, though it would be interesting to find out why they made her seem so boyish. Her scenes with Jane are poignant, and the look in Jane's eyes makes me feel like she's the sweetest person who ever lived. Mr. Bennet here has always struck an odd chord because of the way he looks, his long hair and the way he slouches, but he's portrayed with the kind of personality that makes him hard not to adore. Kitty and Lydia go bouncing through the frame at length, and so we get the message loud and clear about their boisterous dispositions. And poor Mary is largely forgotten until the time comes when we need to know how inept she is as a musician. It's easy to see why this version gets so much flack compared to the BBC version, when we consider Jennifer Ellie's Elizabeth merely standing by a rock, looking so genuinely humble and sweet, while Keira Knightley's Elizabeth stands majestically upon a boulder, overlooking the valley as though she's about to fly off like Superman. Or get blown away, that is. It looks awfully windy out there. It's reasonable to understand why Austen purists would have trouble with this movie, in light of the liberties taken with, for example, Darcy's proposal scene. Instead of a little room at Hunsford, we get the breathtaking view at Stour Head. In my opinion, this is visual metaphor taking place. We give it a pass because the location emboldens the performance, and what we get is the real feeling of human energy in the theatrics of the display. Lady Catherine's Rosings is another place where the art design and lighting makes way for an unforgettable performance that compares reasonably with her predecessor. And though it's true this version doesn't have London in it, the Wickham story has been hacked to pieces, and Lydia's elopement comes off as a bit too secondary. We get as a trade-off emotional deliveries that work well in a movie theater. I mean, who is going to disagree that the scene where Darcy finds Elizabeth in the early morning hours isn't to die for? Perfectly timed with the sunrise to induce a heart-throbbing romantic meltdown. Doesn't everyone want to go out and fall in love now? I don't think the 2005 version was ever meant to displace the beauty and charm of the 1995 version. I just think that the movie was designed to be a cinematic experience that looks great while at the same time delivering on some fairly decent performances. So if you love Pride and Prejudice as a story, then my advice is to watch as many versions as you'd like while keeping in mind that nothing will ever compare with the novel itself. Jane Austen was a master of the English language, and she loved to tell stories. She grew up doing so, and that gave her the experience and the appropriate skills to deliver up the best for her readers. And so it makes sense that First Impressions, later known as Pride and Prejudice, would become one of the greatest novels ever written. Booktime Learning is dedicated to the study of writing and literature. If you enjoyed my video, please consider clicking the like button and/or subscribing, and thank you for watching.